It remains unclear why he was transferred to the Central New York Correctional Facility. At one moment, an officer forcefully grabs him by the neck and drops his semi-conscious body onto an examination table.
I will say I do find it crazy that this guy can't even escape the paparazzi from prison. The video was likely taken by an inmate on a phone that was smuggled into the prison and then sold to TMZ, and it makes me wonder how much the inmate got paid, because he probably sacrificed his phone in order for the world to see this video.
People saw in that video. And I know that they're trying to keep a different narrative, but if you've seen that video, you're not going to forget that video.
Yeah, no, you're not going to forget that video. He's a person, but what they're saying is the video didn't happen because of a bad freak-off.
I don't think that the jurors are going to be able to separate that video from their mind.
New footage has recently emerged from inside one of the most feared federal detention centers in the United States. What the video exposes about Sean Diddy Combs' existence behind bars is far more disturbing than anyone expected. In the leaked footage, the man once synonymous with private jets, luxury estates, and chart-topping hits looks completely unrecognizable. The designer suits and diamond chains are gone. In their place is a faded prison jumpsuit, hollowed eyes, and the slow, cautious movement of someone learning, in real time, what survival truly means. This is not just another story of a celebrity downfall. It is a brutal depiction of how one of hip-hop's most powerful figures was stripped from a life of excess and thrown into confinement. A man who once commanded empires is now struggling for breath inside concrete walls. Just over a year earlier, in September 2024, Diddy was arrested at Miami International Airport in what authorities described as an attempted escape. Federal agents swarmed his private jet moments before takeoff, placing him under arrest as shocked bystanders recorded the scene on their phones.
Agents took Sean Diddy Combs into custody. He's seen in this video entering the Park Hyatt Hotel in Midtown Manhattan with others when agents from Homeland Security Investigations approach and separate him. They place Combs under arrest and lead him out the front door in handcuffs. His lawyer said Combs had come to New York 2 weeks earlier with the intention of turning himself in. He did not expect the agents to be waiting at his hotel last Monday night.
Within hours, he was transported north, not to a luxury holding area or a discreet rehabilitation center, but to the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, widely known as MDC. This is a facility that federal judges themselves have described as barbaric and unfit for human confinement. For a man who once dominated the music industry and influenced an entire generation, this marked the point of no return. The transition was stark, from a $48 million mansion overlooking Miami Beach to a cell barely large enough to turn around in. This was the collapse of a man once considered untouchable. And now, newly leaked footage exposes just how dire Diddy's life behind bars has become. What is happening inside MDC Brooklyn is not merely punishment. It is a nightmare few could have foreseen. Tucked away in Brooklyn's Sunset Park neighborhood, the Metropolitan Detention Center appears unremarkable from the outside, a dull gray tower of concrete and steel wrapped in razor wire. But behind those walls exists a reality so grim that even federal authorities have begun refusing to send inmates there. Constructed in the early 1990s, MDC Brooklyn was designed to house approximately 1,000 inmates. Today, it holds nearly 1,400. The result is a suffocating labyrinth of narrow corridors, flickering lights, and relentless noise. Cells are stacked like storage units, many plagued by broken plumbing and non-existent ventilation. By September 2024, the Federal Bureau of Prisons made a rare and unprecedented decision. It stopped assigning sentenced inmates to MDC altogether. In doing so, the agency effectively admitted the facility was too dysfunctional to operate safely. And yet, this is where Diddy was placed, a man once worth hundreds of millions, now confined in one of the nation's most notorious prisons.
Got video of him at Fort Dix reporting for work in the library.
This was the chapel, and this is the media library in the chapel, which is where Diddy's currently working. He's working in a Life Connections program, which is an 18-month program that helps rehab people, get them closer to spirituality, to charity groups, and with that, it will shorten his sentence. It does sound like he used maybe possibly some connections to get a better job.
MDC Brooklyn is the same facility that previously held R. Kelly, Ghislaine Maxwell, Sam Bankman-Fried, Martin Shkreli, and even Jeffrey Epstein before his transfer. It is a grim crossroads where some of the most infamous criminal cases in the country converge, a volatile mix of fraudsters, gang members, and fallen public figures. Federal judges have condemned the conditions there for years. One described the prison as barbaric. Another said it violated basic standards of human decency. The facility's history is littered with scandals. Electrical failures have plunged inmates into freezing darkness. Sewage leaks, infestations, and medical neglect have led to deaths. And now, footage from Diddy's incarceration confirms what insiders have long warned. MDC Brooklyn is not simply a detention center. It is a modern-day dungeon. Inmates refer to it as hell on earth, a place where lights never shut off, the air never feels clean, and hope slowly erodes. So when Diddy arrived in late 2024, he lost more than his freedom. He entered an environment designed to dismantle people mentally and physically. The new footage shows he is learning that reality the hard way. When Sean Diddy Combs first walked through the gates of MDC Brooklyn, the atmosphere felt oppressive, thick, cold, almost metallic. The constant slam of steel doors echoed through the corridors like a warning. For the first time in decades, he had no control over anything, not his surroundings, not his schedule, not even the light in his cell. The Bureau of Prisons took no risks. Within minutes of intake, he was placed in the special housing unit, known to inmates simply as the box. Officially, it's for protective custody. In practice, it is solitary confinement disguised as safety. For Diddy, that meant spending 23 hours a day inside a concrete cell measuring roughly 8 by 10 feet. A steel bunk was bolted to the wall, topped with a paper-thin mattress no thicker than a laptop. One gray blanket, faintly smelling of bleach and despair, was all he was given. There was no pillow, only a folded towel. The toilet sat inches from where he slept. The fluorescent light never shut off, bathing the cell in an unrelenting glare that erased any sense of time. Inmates have said the constant illumination makes days and nights blur together. The silence is not peaceful. It magnifies every sound, the drip of pipes, the buzz of electricity, the distant screams traveling through the vents. One former inmate described hearing people unravel mentally, speaking to walls, to themselves, to ghosts. You can't see them, he said, but you can feel the pain moving through the vents. The narration whispers, the soundtrack of MDC Brooklyn, a low, endless hum of suffering. For a man accustomed to private security and luxury penthouses, this was psychological warfare. Guards barked commands with mechanical precision. Face the wall. Hands behind your back. Every movement was monitored. Every step outside the cell required full restraints, handcuffs, ankle shackles, and a waist chain, even for brief medical checks or meetings with lawyers. Meals arrived through a metal slot. Lukewarm. Tasteless. Barely edible. Breakfast came before dawn, instant oatmeal and a slice of white bread. Lunch might be bologna on stale wheat. Dinner was often a small scoop of beans or rice devoid of flavor. Some days, he simply didn't eat.
And they say that the conditions are not up to scratch.
What makes it worse is the food. Mostly everything is stale food, is old food that's donated, that they wrap up or they cook for you. It's full of not roaches and the giant cockroaches. You know, you can smell the mold, you can smell the rot, you can smell the jail that it needs to be rebuilt. It needs help. I don't think anyone should be in that particular jail. You're in prison and you're serving time, or you're waiting, to go to court or to go to trial or whatever it is, does not mean that you're not a human being. Just like what's going on with Diddy, he still deserves to be treated as a human.
Legal calls were restricted. Visits were denied. Communication with his attorneys was limited to supervised sessions behind plexiglass, every word monitored and recorded. His legal team later argued that the system was deliberately isolating him, making meaningful defense preparation nearly impossible. His daily routine was stripped down to its barest form. At 6 a.m., lights blasted at full brightness. Guards shouted roll call through the doors. The cell remained perpetually cold, seeping into his bones. He was permitted 1 hour of recreation per day, if allowed at all. That meant stepping into a cage-like enclosure on the rooftop, surrounded by chain-link fencing. No direct sunlight. No fresh air. Just a gray sky overhead, distant and unreachable. A reminder of freedom that once came effortlessly. Prison records later showed that during his first 48 hours, Diddy made no requests, no calls, no complaints. One guard described him as calm but vacant, like someone actively trying not to think. But MDC has a way of eroding even the strongest minds. The noise, the cold, the unending light, it distorts time. Minutes drag into hours. Hours stretch into days. Sleep becomes elusive when the lights never dim and the walls never stop vibrating. Through the vents came whispers, murmurs, shouts, sobs. That was when it became clear. This was not protection. It was psychological punishment. The kind that leaves no visible bruises but permanently scars the mind. In those first 48 hours, the man who once commanded stages and boardrooms learned a brutal truth. Inside MDC Brooklyn, status is meaningless. Fame, money, power, none of it shields you from isolation. But what followed proved isolation was only the beginning. Because before the week ended, Diddy learned that solitude wasn't the greatest danger. The real threat waited just outside his cell door. To understand what Sean Diddy Combs endured, you have to understand the facility itself. A prison so notorious that veteran federal judges have called it a constitutional disgrace. For decades, MDC Brooklyn has been more than a detention center. It has been a lawsuit, a headline, and a warning. The first major collapse occurred in January 2019, when a massive power failure plunged the prison into darkness for nearly a week during a polar vortex. Temperatures dropped to 2 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside, inmates froze in total darkness. No heat, no lights, no hot food, no communication. Images leaked showing silhouettes pressed against icy windows. Handwritten signs begged for warmth and water. Protesters gathered outside chanting, "Occupy the streets till they get heat." A mother screamed through tears, "My son's in there. They're freezing them to death." Only after national outrage and a 10 million class action lawsuit did the Bureau of Prisons acknowledge what had happened.
So we're here at MDC. All we hear are the inmates banging on the windows to get our attention. And when they see that we're here, they bang louder. And we're not getting anything from the Bureau of Prisons. They're not telling us anything.
The lawsuit described scenes pulled straight from dystopia. Inmates trapped in pitch-black cells. Overflowing toilets. No showers. No fresh air. Some went nearly a week without a hot meal. When power was restored, the damage to both the structure and the people was already done. The years that followed brought more horror. By 2023, mold and sewage leaks were documented throughout the facility. Inmates described black fungus creeping up walls, rats roaming corridors, and rotten food served daily, sometimes crawling with maggots. One correctional officer later admitted staff refused to eat cafeteria meals. The stench of neglect permeated the building. Lockdowns became routine due to staff shortages. Medical care was scarce. Prisoners waited weeks or months for treatment. A 2016 inspection by the National Association of Women Judges labeled the conditions unconscionable, citing violations of both U.S. and international standards. Nothing changed. By 2024, the human toll became undeniable. At least 4 inmates died between 2023 and 2025. Some by suicide, others through violence. In June 2024, Uriel White, awaiting trial on gun charges, was stabbed to death. Weeks later, Edwin Cato was beaten during a fight and died that night. That same summer, security footage revealed 13 members stabbing another inmate 44 times with makeshift knives. 2 shivs were recovered. 9 men were charged. The footage raised a chilling question. How were these weapons entering a federal prison?
There was an MS-13 stabbing while it was at Buckingham Correctional Center. And I don't know what the issue was, but they got word from the street that they had to take care of one of their own, that he was out of line. So they hit him up on the yard, they dropped the knife, and they all wandered off. So the guy kind of just sat out there on the yard, and we had thought he got jumped because we weren't really paying attention. And then we realized he's not walking too well. Something's really wrong. He made it all the way up the stairs, made it back to his pod, and just fell out on the floor and started bleeding out from his gut where he had stuffed his shirt, so he was trying to hide in the blood. So they had this big investigation, but they could never prove what happened. And it's really crazy because they had dropped the knife after they stabbed him so they wouldn't get caught with it.
Even guards privately admit the violence never stops. Lockdowns are frequent but ineffective. Some areas go unmonitored for hours. Overcrowding fuels constant tension. Defense attorneys now cite MDC conditions in court, arguing for reduced sentences not out of sympathy, but because the environment itself amounts to extra punishment. One lawyer told the New York Times, "It's punishment stacked on punishment." Prosecutors no longer object. They know the reality. Perhaps the most disturbing element isn't the violence. It's the silence. When inmates die, statements are brief and sterile. An incident occurred. An investigation is underway. No names. No accountability. The Bureau of Prisons insists conditions are improving. Public defenders say nothing has changed. Mold still grows. Cells still flood. Screams still echo. For Sean Diddy Combs, isolated for his own protection, this was the world just beyond his door. Every sound carried threat. Every silence signaled loss. His fame made him a target. Hurting someone famous inside those walls brings instant notoriety. And as tensions escalated, the inevitable happened. By October 2024, Diddy had been incarcerated for just over a month. Long enough to understand prison rhythms. Not long enough to anticipate how quickly they could turn deadly. According to reports, including one from the Daily Mail, his longtime friend and producer Charlie Finney revealed that one night nearly ended his life. Diddy was asleep when he sensed someone watching him. He opened his eyes to see another inmate standing over him, gripping a makeshift shiv. Sharpened metal glinted under the fluorescent light, inches from his throat. Witnesses later said Diddy did not panic. He remained eerily calm. Former federal warden Cameron Lindsay warned that someone with Diddy's notoriety is never safe inside MDC. Reports varied on how the incident ended. Some said guards intervened. Others credited another inmate, Raymond Castillo, who later shared his account.
So now we're actually living with him. So now we're studying him and analyzing him in person. So, I feel like we all got to recognize with time was that he's human, and he's like one of us. He's one of us, and I feel like he handled himself like with humility.
Castillo said it began over something trivial, a chair. The attacker demanded it. Diddy refused. Hours later, after lights out, the man returned, slipping into Diddy's cell. Castillo saw movement and reacted instinctively, grabbing the attacker's wrist just as the weapon was raised. Guards rushed in. No blood was spilled, but the message was clear. According to Castillo, Diddy did not shout or curse. He looked at the man and quietly said, "Pray for peace." Guards later described the footage as surreal. But inside prison culture, it also sent another message. You are no longer untouchable. Attacking a high-profile inmate isn't personal. It's power. Defense attorney Brian Steele later said Diddy's fame was now a liability. He's a walking headline. Some called the incident an assassination attempt. Others said it was intimidation. Either way, it changed everything. The Bureau of Prisons downplayed it. An altercation occurred. No injuries. TMZ later confirmed the core details. Diddy's legal team demanded relocation. The attack shifted his incarceration from punishment to survival.
And, he's not going to think solitary confinement, in a prison, let alone one like MDC Brooklyn, which, has been written about extensively, where federal judges have refused to put their clients in there, or at least put the Federal Bureau of Prisons on notice that the place is, infestated with rodents, that there is crime, that there are weapons, that there is drugs, that there's violence, and that it's just a very difficult place.
In court filings, Brian Steele warned bluntly, "My client's life is in danger." He described MDC as violent, chaotic, and incapable of protecting a high-profile inmate. The judge denied relocation, accepting assurances from the Bureau of Prisons. Few found comfort in that. Judges began factoring MDC conditions into sentencing. One wrote, "Reduced sentences have become routine due to conditions of confinement." Civil rights groups demanded investigations. Former inmates came forward. Then, in March 2025, Congressman Dan Goldman attempted to inspect the facility. He was denied entry. "What are they hiding?" he asked publicly. The clip went viral.
Local congressional Democrats entered the gate to the Metropolitan Detention Center. A masked agent locked it behind them. He ignored calls to identify himself and then proceeded to lock the front door of the federal jail. It effectively left Congressman Dan Goldman, Congresswoman Nydia Velázquez, and Congressman Adriano Espaillat
that are at the front door
stuck in a small yard for a period of time.
We've heard is that the conditions here are incredibly horrendous, but also that people are not gaining access to lawyers.
This is the stuff of authoritarian fascist governments, where they hide people based on fictional reasons and prevent any oversight and accountability.
Outside MDC, protests grew. Supporters gathered with signs demanding reform. Some were fans. Others were former inmates. Diddy reportedly heard their chants at night. His attorney continued filing motions. Public scrutiny intensified. By summer 2025, even prosecutors acknowledged that keeping Diddy at MDC was becoming a liability. After 15 months, the Bureau of Prisons acted. Quietly. Before dawn. Shackled, Diddy was transferred to Fort Dix Federal Correctional Institution in New Jersey. He believed it might be a fresh start. He was wrong.
Have not heard he's actually been transferred from MDC to his choice prison. This is Fort Dix. This is located in New Jersey. This is where he actually wanted to go. However, the Judge Samaranian, was kind of against it. He did not approve it. However, I guess the prison board overruled Judge Samaranian, and Diddy's currently in Fort Dix. Now, what's interesting about this is there are people who have been saying negative things about Combs. You guys already know who I'm talking about. Well, that individual had the audacity to focus on Sean Diddy Combs. This was a fight that he allegedly had while he was in prison, where a knife was allegedly held to his neck. That's what the person is reporting about today. However, breaking news, he just got released. Or, yeah, he released, you could say that. Got released from MDC, and he's currently in Fort Dix. This is actually great news for Sean Diddy Combs. To be honest, this is kind of like a prison, resort kind of prison. So this is actually a good thing for him. However, we know how people...
On October 30th, 2025, he was woken before dawn. Pack up. His belongings were stuffed into a duffel bag. Cuffs and shackles followed. He was escorted to a transport van. Destination: Fort Dix, a low-security facility 50 miles from Philadelphia. Fort Dix, a former military base, houses over 4,000 inmates. Power structures form quickly. Reputation matters. Diddy was placed in RDP, a residential drug abuse program his attorneys fought for. It offered therapy, structure, and the possibility of a reduced sentence. He was assigned to assist in the chapel's media library, a rare privilege. Once surrounded by luxury, he now worked quietly among worn religious texts and old VHS tapes. A silent, poetic reminder of how far he had fallen.
Got video of him at Fort Dix reporting for work in the library.
This was the chapel, and this is the media library in the chapel, which is where Diddy's currently working. He's working in a Life Connections program, which is an 18-month program that helps rehab people, get them closer to spirituality, to charity groups, and with that, it will shorten his sentence. It does sound like he used maybe possibly some connections to get a better job.
Then, in early November 2025, the first piece of leaked footage finally appeared. The video was brief, lasting less than a minute, but it detonated across the internet almost instantly. The clip showed Diddy inside the chapel library, dressed in standard-issue prison khakis. He removed his blue jacket, leaned in to exchange a few quiet words with another inmate, slipped the jacket back on, and then walked toward the exit wearing a faint, almost imperceptible smile. There was no audio, only the grainy, low hum typical of surveillance footage. Yet even without sound, the images spoke volumes. To casual viewers, the moment appeared calm. It looked like a humbled man adjusting to incarceration, someone who had finally settled into his new reality. To many, it seemed peaceful. But to people who truly understand how prison operates, that smile told a very different story. It looked practiced. The calm appeared manufactured. A former inmate from Fort Dix who saw the clip summarized it bluntly: "You learn to smile in there so people don't smell fear." That's not peace. That's survival. The Bureau of Prisons did not share the public's curiosity. They were furious. Officials at Fort Dix released a formal statement saying they neither authorized nor produced the video and that the leak was under active investigation. Behind closed doors, staff were reportedly scrambling to determine who had smuggled the footage out. And while the outside world debated whether the clip represented strength or surrender, life inside Fort Dix continued and very quickly began to unravel. Within weeks of Diddy's transfer, rumors of disciplinary violations began circulating. The first whispers involved alcohol possession, a classic prison contraband controversy. Inmates claimed Diddy had been caught with a small supply of Pruno, the homemade alcohol brewed from fermented fruit and sugar. TMZ seized on the story. His publicist, Judah Angelmeyer, immediately denied the allegations, labeling them malicious gossip and insisting Diddy was focused on rehabilitation, not indulgence. But the rumors didn't stop there. Days later, another report emerged, this one involving an unauthorized phone call. This time, prison records later confirmed the claim. Diddy had placed a 3-person call, a serious violation under Bureau of Prisons regulations. He stated the call was related to a legal discussion with his attorneys concerning a public statement for the New York Times. Officials disagreed. They accused him of violating communication security protocols, an infraction that carries automatic punishment. The consequences were swift. 90 days without phone access. 90 days without commissary privileges. An internal recommendation to extend his incarceration by nearly a month. The ruling was officially filed on November 4, 2025, his 56th birthday. For most people, birthdays mark celebration. For Diddy, it served as another reminder that every decision inside those walls carried consequences. To the public, the leaked footage had seemed harmless, even hopeful. To the Bureau of Prisons, it was an embarrassment. And to Diddy himself, it became a burden. Behind the faint smile captured on camera was a man now under intensified scrutiny. Every movement monitored. Every rumor amplified. Every misstep transformed into another headline. What had once been a quiet chapel library job now felt like a spotlight. Fort Dix was cleaner than MDC Brooklyn, but the pressure inside its walls was no less suffocating. As one former inmate explained, Fort Dix isn't as brutal as Brooklyn. It's more polite about breaking you. The routine. The surveillance. The constant judgment. It's all designed to wear you down slowly, piece by piece, until even your silence can be read as guilt. That smile in the leaked footage came to symbolize something larger. A man trying to show the world he was okay, even as the system worked relentlessly to prove he wasn't. That short clip, just seconds of him walking through a hallway, revealed a truth many weren't ready to confront. Because what the cameras failed to capture was what was still ahead. The rumors. The punishments. The slow unraveling of someone who had already lost nearly everything, yet somehow still had further to fall. The footage was supposed to show Diddy at peace. Instead, it exposed the illusion. It reminded the world that for him, freedom wasn't the next chapter. It was the one that had already been erased. When the footage of Sean Diddy Combs inside Fort Dix first surfaced online, it spread faster than nearly any prison leak in recent memory. Within 24 hours, millions had watched it, shared it, slowed it down, and dissected every second as if it were a movie trailer no one ever expected to see. At first glance, the scene seemed simple. Diddy in khaki prison clothing, walking calmly through the chapel's media library. A man appearing to have accepted his fate. Reading, working, offering a faint smile before disappearing down a long corridor. But for those who have lived inside federal prisons, the video told a completely different story. What the public mistook for peace was actually exhaustion made visible. Freeze any frame and the details stand out. The untrimmed gray beard weighing down his jaw, not a fashion choice, but evidence of time passing in a place where mirrors are scarce and barbers are overbooked for months. His posture slightly hunched, shoulders drawn inward, arms hanging loose, not from defeat, but from the constant pressure of being watched. In prison, even posture becomes a defensive strategy. Every movement in the clip, the slow nod, the polite half-smile, the brief glance toward the camera before exiting, was not comfort. It was calculation. A former Fort Dix inmate who spent nearly 2 years in the same unit explained it plainly. You learn to perform calm. You smile. You act normal. Because if you look angry or scared, someone will test you. That smile? That's the survival face. That fleeting grin, the one that fueled headlines, was not joy. It was habit. A reflex developed during years of public life, now repurposed as armor. The footage also revealed something more subtle. When Diddy exits the chapel, his hands are tucked tightly into his sleeves. Former inmates recognized it immediately. It's known as the fold. A subconscious attempt to hide vulnerability, suppress shaking, or appear smaller and less threatening. In an environment where even eye contact can spark conflict, every gesture carries meaning. Then there's the pace of his walk. Slow, controlled, deliberate. The gait of someone who has learned to measure each step. In prison, rhythm equals survival. Move too fast and you attract attention. Move too slow and you appear weak. You find a tempo that says, I'm fine. Don't look too closely. When he passes another inmate pushing a black cart, there's a brief moment of interaction. No words. No handshake. No direct eye contact. Just proximity. Inside Fort Dix, that silence is intentional. Every acknowledgement carries risk. To outsiders, it looks mundane. To those inside, it's communication coded without sound. Even the location tells a story. The chapel library is one of the few places in Fort Dix where inmates can move semi-freely. It's often called the calm room. Religious texts sit beside battered paperbacks and old CDs. The air conditioning sometimes works. It's also one of the rare spaces where cameras don't track every inch constantly. That's why the leak caused such alarm. For footage to escape from that room, someone, staff or inmate, took a deliberate risk. The leak itself became a message. Look at him now. Look at what power looks like when the spotlight disappears. Online reactions split instantly. Some fans flooded social media with sympathy. He looks peaceful, one wrote. He's finding himself. Others, especially those familiar with prison life, rejected that interpretation immediately. That's not peace, one response read. That's survival mode. Podcasts dissected the clip frame by frame. Legal analysts debated whether sharing it was ethical. Diddy's publicist issued a measured statement, calling the footage a private moment that should never have been made public. But the damage was done. The clip transformed Diddy's incarceration into something larger than a legal case. It became a cultural spectacle. An unintended documentary capturing a man learning how to exist without the privileges that once defined him. For Diddy, the consequences were tangible. Surveillance increased. Guards monitored him more closely. Other inmates grew distant, wary that association with him could bring unwanted attention. For a man who spent decades in front of cameras, the irony was cruel. Now, the camera was the thing that made him most vulnerable. As one correctional officer reportedly said off record, when you've been famous your whole life, anonymity feels like punishment. But in here, fame gets you killed. That is what the footage truly shows. Not acceptance. Not comfort. But the quiet unraveling of a man who no longer knows where performance ends and survival begins. The exhaustion isn't just physical. It's emotional erosion. The smile isn't warmth. It's strategy. The silence isn't peace. It's fear wearing a calm mask. It's the image of someone stripped of illusion, living day by day in a system designed to erase identity, even one as massive as Diddy's. And the longer he remains inside, the more the system wins. Because in places like Fort Dix, it isn't the walls that destroy you. It's the waiting. The silence between footsteps. The smile you force yourself to wear until it begins to feel real. From music mogul to inmate 639288054, Sean Diddy Combs has learned what true powerlessness feels like. The man who once built empires, filled stadiums, and shaped culture with a single post now spends his days in oversized prison uniforms, obeying orders barked by people who couldn't care less about who he used to be. This kind of fall doesn't just erase wealth or status. It dismantles identity. For years, Diddy controlled everything: his image, his businesses, his narrative. Every move was calculated. Every headline curated. Every frame engineered to preserve the illusion of being untouchable. Inside the Bureau of Prisons, control doesn't exist. There's no entourage, no publicist, no music loud enough to drown out the noise. Here, worth is measured not by fame or money, but by silence, compliance, and how effectively you can disappear. Judges have called MDC Brooklyn barbaric. Lawyers have called it lawless. Those who lived inside call it exactly what it is: hell. A place that punishes beyond the sentence. A place that doesn't just confine people, but grinds them down. Maybe that's what the leaked footage truly revealed. Not scandal. Not spectacle. But a rare, unfiltered glimpse of a man stripped of everything except himself. No stage lights. No luxury. Just a name, a number, and a routine. The silence in those corridors speaks louder than any headline ever could. It says this is what happens when power fades. Fame dissolves. Masks fall. And what remains isn't Sean Combs the mogul or icon. It's a man trying to survive a system he once believed he could outrun. For Diddy, the battle is no longer about freedom. It's about preserving the self. Every day inside is a struggle between who he was and who he's being forced to become. And the longer that struggle continues, the thinner the line grows. That is the true cost of power: not losing what you own, but losing who you are when there's nothing left to own. And one question still hangs in the air. If that footage was leaked, who leaked it? And what else is being hidden inside MDC? Because if this is what they allowed us to see, imagine what they didn't. In the end, it wasn't the sentence that broke him. It was the system that built him up, then swallowed him whole. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video to support the channel. Subscribe to Holly Hype TV for the latest updates and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Until next time, peace.